6:30, so let's start the committee of the whole meeting of Tuesday, March 10th. Order, call the roll, please.
Alderman Strelchak? Here. Alderman Talaco? Here. Alderman Meyer? Here. Alderman Hancher?
Here.
Alderman Bach?
Here.
Alderman Parrish?
Here.
Alderman Bratt?
Here.
Alderman Gebhardt?
Here.
And Mayor Nurbin.
Here. First up, we have approval of the meeting minutes from February 10th.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or corrections to the minutes? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. On to our two discussion items. If you downloaded the packet last week, they might be in reverse order from the packet that was reposted. So the first item we have this evening is Common Council decision to exercise extraterritorial zoning authority, and to walk us through that, looks like we've got Assistant Director Zader.
Yes. I'm sure many.
Free lesson.
Yes, I'm sure many of you are not exposed to extraterritorial jurisdiction. Maybe Alderman Meyer maybe was at one point, but the rest of you probably this is new. So we're going to give you a little background of what it is, and then we'll talk about why it's come up recently. So I'll start off with what it is. So extraterritorial zoning, it allows for cities and villages to have basically control of outside their corporate boundaries. So for a city like Mequon, which is a fourth-class city, they've been given a 1.5-mile extent outside their local boundary to exercise zoning on neighboring townships. Now it gets a little kind of confusing if it's if there's like city of Cedarburg or Grafton where there's a joint overlap, and we don't really need to get into that detail. But it's typically just a 1.5-mile boundary that we have to abide by. The city must adopt basically a resolution in the area that's a zone and intend to expand its ordinance. So we have an ordinance, and I'll go through this in a little bit. And if we do have an ordinance to create a new zoning ordinance or make amendments to it, we have to form a committee. It's the JETSCO committee, which is made up of 3 citizen members of the Planning Commission and 3 town members of the town of Grafton. So benefits of the extraterritorial, I just got this from a website. These are some of the things that are benefits. It's a smoother transition between rural and urban land uses, reduce conflicting land uses, promotes intergovernmental cooperation, makes planning for roads, utilities, and facilities easier, and protects the sensitive areas and valued natural resource areas. On the downside, which I don't have a slide on, I just basically, I think people feel that it's a little heavy-handed for cities to kind of oversee town zoning, especially if there's no intent by that city to annex that land. In terms of what we have, the city of Mequon, I have a map up here that shows the 3 areas that we have extraterritorial jurisdiction over. There are 3 different areas with 3 different dates, as you can see in the middle. There's the 2003 area. That is basically for the Port Washington Road corridor. And then to the east is 2005. That's from the freeway to the Lake Michigan. And then the 2008 area is north of Saddlebrook, basically off of Pioneer Road. These areas had different initiations to why they became extraterritorial areas. I think the 2003 area, they were concerned about development of commercial development along Port Washington Road. The 2005 area, that kind of was the impetus of that was there was a proposed car dealership on the corner off the freeway, and the city didn't want to have that take place there, so they exercised in 2005. In 2008, that was a subdivision development, which I put in the packet the long history of it, but basically what happened was the town actually rezoned the area to 1 acre zoning back in 2006, and the city objected, and we went to court, and we were victorious, and we convened the JETSCO committee, and what happened was the developer wanted 1 acre zoning. The city at the time, we were still on our 5 acre zoning requirements for non-sewered areas. The JETSCO committee eventually decided on 3 acre zoning with a conservation overlay, which would allow 2.5 acre lots, but that took about 1.5 to 2 years to come through to fruition, and then by the time it did, the housing market collapsed and the developer withdrew. So in 2010, we rezoned that area back to agricultural, and that's where it sat till today. So the 2 requests we have in front of us today are the areas. I have the circled one is the one. It's really it's a 1 acre parcel split from a farm area. That's a 1 acre zoning they want to do there. And then the larger one in the pink is a Newman development, which is 127 lots, subdivision on 186 acres with on-site sewer and water. So no sewer and no water. It's a mound and a well. So we brought this to the council because we have to make some decisions on how we want to handle these 2 separate proposals. So I I put in the packet a couple of the options we have. One is we can just affirm our extraterritorial authority, and we would establish the joint committee, and we'd have to bring new members in, because the last time we did this, all our planning commission members are no longer with us, or are not on the commission any longer. That's the easiest one. And the second one was, if the council no longer wants to just exercise its authority, we can adopt an ordinance terminating these existing ordinances and let the town do what they want. We put in another two options in there. One option, the third option, which would have been basically what we've done in the past, which according to our city attorney is not really following the statute. We just treat them like a typical zoning ordinance and run them through planning commission and common council without convening the committee. Now, there's a risk to that, and it's not on us, it'd be on the developer, because somebody that didn't like the development could challenge that we didn't follow the process. Then the fourth option, at least for the area where the 2008 area would be to convene Jetsco and allow them to do 1 acre residential without any further action by common council, because that area we've actually, and I'll show you on the map. Let me finish, pull my map up. So we've actually adopted, sorry, wrong one. Up in the area by Saddlebrook, the Uleo Creek zoning area, we have adopted 1 acre or 3/4 acre zoning on mountain septics with the Uleo Creek zoning districts that we created several years ago. So it's somewhat kind of hypocritical of the city to now say that the town of Grafton cannot do 1 acre zoning with their non-Seward areas. So our recommendation would be to say to change the ordinance to say that if any in that 2008 area, which I'll get back to on the map. Let me just go back to the map here. So that area where the 2008 is, all that black lined area, that would be basically allowed to go to 1 acre zoning without having to exercise extraterritorial zoning any further, and we wouldn't have to take it to the Jetsco committee. They could just do it. Now, if they want to do multifamily or higher density, then we'd have to reconvene Jetsco. So that's our recommendation for that 2008 area. For the area, the blue little box, we would just convene Jetsco for that one, and we'd probably, since it's a pretty minor development area, we'd probably approve that just as a one-off. But this area, we feel the 2005 area is similar to our northeast section of Mequon along the freeway, where it's pretty rural, not a lot of developments occurred there, so we don't want to see full-blown expansion of 1 acre zoning in that area. So we have two recommendations, but for the different areas. One would be, again, to convene the committee and vote on that 1 acre parcel, and then as well as we're convening the committee, we can convene the committee and adopt an ordinance that would change the 2008 area to allow for 1 acre residential densities or less, and not any other commercial or multifamily zoning. So that's staff's recommendation for those two areas. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have, or I think the city attorney also put a memo in there. He can probably explain anything legally with regard to Jetsco, but yeah, that's all I have for this. I just had to answer any questions if you have anything.
Thank you, Jack. We'll open it up for questions now. I'm sure there are a couple. Alderman Meyer.
Jack, if we went the route of allowing developments that would be 1 acre, and not having to go through the committee and that, how would that process work so that we would be aware of that happening? Would they still have to submit for us the zoning on that?
They wouldn't have to submit for zoning any further if we decided to go that path. We still have extras. We have plat authority, so we would still get to review the subdivision plat. So we would be aware of it, but we would not have the ability to challenge the zoning at that point if that's the path we went down. If we just kept it as is, we'd still have the ability to convene Jetsco and object if we didn't want the 1 acre zoning. But our recommendation is to allow them to do 1 acre zoning basically everywhere in that black area, that black box that's where it says 2008.
So be based on their lot sizes for 1 acre, not like a total yield?
It's 1 acre density that they would do. I think what they're proposing here is a conservation design as well. So it would be 1 acre densities.
Okay.
Alderman Strelchak.
Hey, Jack, so we objected to 1 acre density back in, what was it, you said 08?
Well, it was about 05, 06 is what we originally
506.
objected,
And
yes.
then we won a case on it. We fought it, right?
Yep,
We built Saddlebrook subdivision, which is 5 acre density.
that's 5 acre density, correct?
why are we flexing today, or why do we want to flex today? I
Well,
guess
because
is
the
my
Uleo
question.
Creek zoning district, which is basically everything south of Saddlebrook along the Port Washington Road corridor, we've allowed now down to 3/4 acre lots in that are not sewered. So like the area of St. Mary's Hospital, the area by across the street between the freeway and the Port Washington Road, all that is allowed to have 3/4 acre lots without sewer and water. So we're basically telling them that you can't do it. We're actually
I
approved
don't
to
view
do it.
that as hypocritical. It doesn't abut Grafton. You know, this is a situation where it abuts Mequon and a 5-acre subdivision of very high-end homes. Our number one responsibility is to preserve the value of those homes. As a community, like, I would love to work with Grafton and be a partner with them. However, our responsibility is to our residents and the people that invested their money in those homes with the understanding of the zoning and the fact that we fought for the larger parcels previously. So my predication is on the fact that it doesn't abut to that. Do they have zoning authority in our Uleo Creek where we have to run it by them?
No, it doesn't work in reverse. It only works for the cities that we have. They have no authority over our zoning. We just do theirs because they're a township.
Okay.
So and this is why we want to have this conversation. We wanted to see where you guys felt because we haven't had feedback from the council on this issue since 2010, basically.
So my personal opinion, I'm not overly uncomfortable with 1-acre parcels or 1-acre zoning above it, but I'd want a significantly heavier buffer. And I'm not talking feet, I'm talking like hundreds of feet. You know, where they have like an entrance and you drive through and it's, you know, it's treed and then, you know, because we have 5-acre lots across the street, and I think that would, if we can get them to agree to that as a gentleman's agreement, run it through our planning commission.
Well, that would be the
That'd be option one, basically.
purview of the Jetsco committee
Yes.
to bring it up.
We have plat authority, if we could get the gentleman's agreement between the two communities.
Well, plat authority just basically makes, like for CSMs and other land divisions, that it meets their requirements, but we're just double checking it. But if you want that level of control over what they do, then we would be option one for both sections, where we would convene the Jetsco committee and have that discussion at the planning commission.
I like the fact, you know, really what I want to prevent, there's two things I want to prevent here. One is that being a shortcut back and forth between, you know, what is it, Lakefield Road and Pioneer. You know, because that's a busy kind of area with on and off traffic and things like that. And I think anyone going to, like, let's say Costco's they're gonna exit north off of Lakefield Road and, you know, and go that way. Because that's easier just to travel back and forth. But like, all I'm looking for is a bigger buffer to preserve the integrity and the view of that 5-acre subdivision. We've got a heavy buffer on ours as well.
Yeah.
And if we give them the 1-acre density and they use a little more of their open space in that area that's probably low anyway, because that floods really bad. You know,
So I have up on the screen what they're proposing, just so you can kind of see what their proposal is right now.
it's not up currently, but
So they're this is Pioneer Road, so they would be matching up against the entranceway, basically to Saddlebrook. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure why it's not.
Alderman Bach, I know it's your district, but I drive by it every day too, so we're a team.
No, I agree with your points.
Yeah, thank you. Good.
I'm not sure why the screen's not. It's frozen.
You can't put it on the screen?
It was frozen for a second there. Now I can do it, I think. There it is. No, it just keeps going up for some reason. It just doesn't want to go away. I don't know. I could try to shut it down.
One point of confusion when I read through the packet, you know, we had that property that we were going to
There it
zone
is.
off. That's all combined to this, right?
What's that? I didn't understand. I didn't hear the question. Sorry.
In the packet, we had there was the first one that was the Lakefield Road, right?
The first one was that's on Lakefield Road.
And that's connected to this, right? Because I
No.
saw the
No,
little yellow
that's
still off to the right.
that's far away. That's across the freeway basically from this one.
Yeah.
And I can show you that one just as well. So this is Lakefield Road. So they're showing the road going through and actually connecting to Pioneer. So I think that's one of your concerns you had. They're showing again 127 lots as part of this conservation design. So if you want, if the council decides you want to have us to oversee this kind of design issue, then I think you're looking at option one for both locations. We'd have to convene the committee, and the committee would have to hammer those details out.
They've got a pretty hefty buffer, it
There's,
looks like.
there's actually a simpler way to break this down. We have to first decide if we want to continue to exert Jetsco authority, and I'm gathering the answer may be yes. We can resolve that rather simply because it doesn't contemplate any particular development that may happen. One choice is to suspend it and don't do it anymore, or to exert, reaffirm our authority and do it. Just by straw poll, who's in favor of maintaining Jetsco, extraterritorial authority? Look at that. Oh, 100%. Okay, we don't need to debate that anymore. I think the specifics of this development, that won't get decided here. That's what the Jetsco Combined Committee is for. So we can signal some of the stuff we're looking for, but I don't want to enter into a full-blown meeting on it because it's the wrong committee,
So
fortunately.
I guess my question before we form a committee, which is really where I was going a little bit with this, is if we could end up with an agreement, run it through, let's say, our planning commission to understand what it is, and decide if we want to change anything, if it's okay as is, and, we're comfortable as a council, and they're comfortable as a planning commission. Do we need to muddy the waters and make it more complicated?
Make it more complicated being what?
Creating a committee?
I think we have to do that no matter
Yeah, I
what,
think-
is what the attorneys
So we have
advised
to
us.
identify that we want to, at least maintain that level of control.
Yeah, we'll have to convene the committee to have a discussion. I think regardless of whether we want to take action on this particular design, or if we want to just exert our authority to change it to 1 acre overall, we have to convene the committee either way. And we're going to convene the committee anyway with regard to the first option for the 1 acre piece anyway. So we'll have the committee convened. The difference between this option for this subdivision specifically and just allowing 1 acre in this area is that if they come forward with another development, say up in this area, we wouldn't have to convene at that point. Then they would be able to do the 1 acre. That's the difference between the modified option and the option one. Because there's other areas outside that,
And one is just maintain Jetsco authority and take up the singular issue,
at
these two issues.
these two issues at planning commission with
Option two, the second option, which is similar to that, is change the zoning so that if they want to do something similar, again, they don't have to come back and reconvene the Jetsco committee for that area designated, the 2008 area.
yeah, the 2008 area.
This would develop, it looks like, probably 2/3 of it,
Yeah, this is a major chunk of it.
30 of it.
Yeah. There is some vacant land up to the northwest up in this area, basically up in here where the white box is.
So we really just have to, now that we've decided we want to keep Jetsco authority by straw poll, we have to decide which option. I think Alderman Parrish has been waiting to get a few words in here. Waiting patiently, I might add.
Yeah, I'm patient. I like to listen to my colleagues. I guess what I wanted to say is I was on the Uleo Creek Committee, and I wish I had time to pull out all the code and compare it to the staff write-up, but there's a little bit of inconsistency in my head here. The reason, when you say no utilities are going to be required for these 1/4 acre, 3/4 acre lots in Uleo Creek, that's because we certainly no sewer, but we do have this expectation that they are going to hook up to water. Certainly, they will have the ability to do community wells, and if the water is not there and it's further down, they could apply to defer. But if I recall, the requirement is to have the community well infrastructure in place so that they would hook up into water. So the whole logic of why we agreed to that higher density in Uleo Creek was because we were concerned about the impact on water resources. That's why we had it at 5 acre lots. And so the way that the Uleo Creek Committee, in conjunction with public input, was able to kind of justify this was to say, look, we get that all these houses are going to be on holding tanks, but there will be, we're going to bring water down this corridor, and then it's okay. So this just seems like we're doing the complete opposite. Like we're giving them the green light to go do these large subdivisions. I get my natural question is, well, why aren't we maybe we should be selling them water and make them hook up, and we'll have more customers. So I just don't know why we're having this exception. That's a really dense development you just showed us. It's going to have a large impact on natural resources, all the fertilizer and chemicals that go on the lawns. Those were considerations that we had on the Yuleo Creek Committee when you have more dense housing. So I don't see any upside here for the city, and I think that we're imposing something that's less strict on them, and we're restricting ourselves for the reasons I mentioned. So for that reason, I would send a message. It's too dense, and it needs to be on probably some kind of municipal water, or I don't know. What did you approve before? Wasn't it 2.5 acres?
It was a 3-acre base with an RCD overlay, which got it down to about 2.5-acre lots.
So like, why are we suddenly, no offense, but why are we suddenly okay with like 3/4 acre lots? And I think the messaging should maybe be we're okay with what we previously
Well, that's
discussed.
why.
But if you're going to go to this type of density, maybe we should be talking about you hooking up to city water.
Well, that's why we wanted to bring it in front of the committee, because again, Yuleo Creek, there is a possibility to have water, but it's the stuff that it would develop on Pioneer Road. Obviously, they're not going to have water there anytime soon.
Okay.
So there's still a potential to have these on-site wells in those areas.
Yeah, so then they would defer, but then, so like in our Yuleo Creek area, we probably would grant a deferral until the water comes by them, but then we will make them hook up. And in this case, it's so far north that we'll never have that opportunity. We don't have that authority.
Well, that's why we were trying to get feedback from you guys on what path you want to go down with this.
I would also argue
That's my
that
input.
you could build in Uleo Creek right now at those densities, and it'd be, depending on where you did it, almost as long before water pipe ever came, because where's the water pipe end? Columbia St. Mary's?
St. Mary's, basically, so yeah, you're
Yeah,
talking
and it's about a mile.
mile and a half.
mile
But
and a
eventually
half
we'll be
to a
there,
mile.
and we will make our residents hook up. And so why can't they?
Alderman Talaco. Alderwoman Talaco, sorry.
No worries. I have similar concerns with it not having sewer or water. The river is also there, and I think that, yes, we do need to commend the committee, and that we need to probably keep with what is there and see if we can form a good relationship with the town, but get a little bit more desirable development, given that there is no water or sewer out there.
Any other feedback from the committee? Maybe explain once again what the zoning allows in Uleo Creek.
Yuleo Creek
Everyone understands, because not everyone was here when it was approved.
Yuleo Creek in certain areas allows you to go down to 3/4 acre lots based on, without having sewer or water. Now, again, there's a potential for water to be there in the future, but that could be 10, 20 years before that occurs to the farthest north sections of the city. So, it is similar in a sense to what they're proposing in Grafton. If we want to go down the path where we still want to stick with the 5-acre zoning, we can do the same thing we did back in 2008, and we can convene JETSCO and have that discussion. I just wanted to, again, we haven't had this discussion in 15 years. I wanted to see if there was a different philosophy from the council. And I thought probably there was some modifications to that philosophy because of what we did on Uleo Creek. Because at the time, I think what Alderman Tlako stated was probably correct, that the biggest concern was the river and the impact of the sewage on the river. So, and so that's where we kind of objected at that point. It was more about sewer, not necessarily water at that time. But now with the holding tanks that we're allowing, or mound systems we're allowing, and the ability to do holding tanks there, they feel that is not an issue. But if we still feel that's a concern or an issue, that we can convene JETSCO again, and we can have the same discussion we had back in 2008.
Alderman Bach.
So why can't we just keep it the same? I mean, we could, just like
When you say the same,
you had in whatever it was, 2008.
well, we'd have to go. It was rezoned back to agricultural. in 2010. Because when a developer withdrew his application, they rezoned that area back to ag. So it's all considered ag, either A1 or A2, which is 10 acre or 35 acres residential. So they're going to have to change it one way or another if they want to develop that land.
Could it be 2.5 acres? Does it have
Well,
to be?
that would be the negotiation we do through the JESCO committee, the same as we did last time.
Yeah.
And that's where I need your advice. Tell me how we want to handle this, because if we're still looking to that density level, then we can go back to them and say, this is what we think we're going to only allow. And the JESCO committee members would have to hammer that out.
Yeah, I think it's too dense. I would be in favor of something else. I don't know. I'm just throw out 2.5 acres.
And that's where we came up last time. They have like basically a 1 acre, a 3 acre, and a 5 acre zoning in Grafton. And so we did the 3 acre, but then they have a conservation overlay with an RCDO, and we applied that. That's where we came up with a 2.5 acre basically yield out of that.
Yeah.
Alderman Strelchak.
Hey, Mayor, do you want to just take a straw poll on if we'd be okay with the 3 acres? You know, if they came back with
That's really not the purview of this committee. The purview of this committee is to direct the path, and then it sounds like either way, we're going to be convening a JETSCO committee comprised of 3 members of our planning commission and 3 members of their town board. And
Well, it may not be the purview, but it still would be a good idea to understand what the council feels.
we've been discussing it. I
Yeah.
think there's plenty of feedback coming out of this, what people's views are. And we can continue to talk about it. We've got a few minutes to make sure everyone gets their opinions out on the table, but I don't think
Yeah.
we're not crafting a plan.
No, I'm just saying, I'm trying to keep it easy. You know, putting together that committee is a challenge, and we really want to let them, you want to be good neighbors and let them do development as they see with their city vision within reason, right? So, you know, my thought was we just would send an unofficial letter or an official letter if we choose to do that route, sharing that, you know, it was the committee of the whole's preference to see the 3 acre zoning. We'd be comfortable with that. This is a discussion based on what our comfort would be, and if they came back with that, we wouldn't exercise the, you know, the JESCO on this parcel. I don't really care about the Lakeland one because it doesn't connect to Mequon. Like, I don't, you know, we're talking about Uleo Creek. It doesn't touch Grafton. Like, I want to be respectful of our neighbors, but if our subdivisions that we choose to, our zoning on, don't touch the other community, and it's not going to have a high probability of impacting them, you know, I don't really care, you know. And what they do north, I mean, they have Costco and neighborhoods that are smaller subdivisions and smaller lots and, you know, smaller houses, and I'm okay with that, and it's great for them.
It's all within the 1.5 mile boundary, and that's written in the statutes. So we don't,
I don't know.
but that is what the statutes say. So we can't shrug that one off and not take it up just because it's a one-off and it's a mile away. This one is right on the border, the larger development.
And if we want to review the plan and have any say in the plan, we need the JESCO regardless, correct?
Well, yeah, we have to convene JESCO either, unless you wanted to just abandon our ability to do extraterritorial, we're going to convene JESCO no matter what in this case, because we'd either have to adopt that 1 acre ordinance or we would have to convene a committee to discuss potential changes. Now, what I'm hearing from you is that you'd rather see like 2.5 acre, 3 acre densities. We would have to convene JETSCO and have that discussion with them at that time, which we can do. I just need some direction.
When we abandon our authority, I guess, can we abandon it by parcel or do we need to abandon it by principle as a whole?
Well, I thought we took a straw poll. We didn't want to abandon the.
There was 0 supporters of abandoning it just minutes ago.
Again, I'm trying to simplify the process if we can and help them out and help us out. Because it takes attorneys' fees, time, and expense to put this together, so.
Well, it's just another planning commission meeting in essence, and like I think it would convene at the end of another regularly scheduled planning commission meeting. It'd just be a different group of people sitting up here. Okay. 3 people would stay, and some others would go, and some new people would come in.
The planning commission, it could be the same meeting, and it would just be who's voting on any particular ones. By statute, the plan commission, the full plan commission, has the ability to participate in the committee. It's only the 6 members, the 3 from the plan commission and 3 from the town that actually
three voting
vote.
members, but the rest will be sitting.
Correct,
Yeah.
but everybody else can participate.
Who breaks the tie? Andy, do you get to break the tie? Mr. Mayor, sorry.
No, if there's a tie, it's just a tie, which in this case just means that the existing agricultural zoning would stay in place. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, while we're taking up this matter, does anyone have any feedback on the proposed development? So we're sending at least clear signals before we engage in such a meeting, at least from the council. I mean, you won't be voting at the Jetsco meeting, but you can certainly get your opinion out there, and several have. Any last takers? Well, let's get it out now. I mean, it's
Yeah,
this came to us because they've been entertaining this proposal by a developer, and
Sure.
they're requesting this. So that's why we're discussing it. But
there's other people that have concerns with water and sewer, and I would mirror that. But, you know, I'm more concerned about the lower rectangle that abuts Mequon. You know, at least maybe go to 2.5 acres with a heavy buffer, you know, in that space to have it feel similar to what the corridor feels like driving through. And then if they went a little further dense north, I would be reasonably accepting of something like that. So, you know, 3 acre zoning in that space, and, you know, the rest
Some
of
to
it
the north, a
would
little
be-
different, a little more dense to the north.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, their deal. The only thing to take into account that we'll want to make sure that we understand is, like, I've ridden my fat tire bike through that flooded road. So there's heavy watershed and rainfall events that
Yeah.
flows right from that property. It goes into the Uleo Creek,
Mm-hmm.
and then it comes right down in the middle of our Uleo Creek, just north of Highland Road. I fished that spot. Shh, don't tell anybody. You know, there's big fish right there. But it comes right into the heart of the north side of Mequon. So if we have heavy fertilizer offload and things like that, you know, we're going to want to at least be conscientious of that space. And, you know, DNR approvals are one thing, but what residents spread on their yard is another. So we want to make sure that we're just conscientious of what we're doing.
So if I could summarize, you prefer to, we're going to exercise authority for both areas. You're not as concerned about the small one lot development because it's pretty far north and away from the city. And you'd be less concerned with more dense development that would occur north in this area versus down in this area here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Other people have
Does
stronger opinions on the sewer
anyone
lots.
else share that general opinion? Okay, so at least a significant portion of the council. So blending in the density, fading it in, and maybe getting more dense to the north. Alderwoman Talaco.
I would be in agreement to that as well, except for the fact that they're not sewered lots, and I do think we need to take into consideration the river, and that it is, you know, there is flooding and other stuff there, so could it be heavier on the far north? Sure, but given that they're non-sewered, that poses, you know, issues for me on that west side where it kind of butts out towards the river.
Okay, we've got our feedback. Anyone else going once, going twice? I guess we can start scheduling Jetsco meetings. Jim.
Yes.
All right. In the interest of keeping this meeting on time, let's move on to consultation for a proposed residential development and associated utility service for the property located on 107 acres west of Bear Road, south of Donges Bay Road, and north of Lily Lane Nature Preserve.
Do you want to start or? So this is an issue with regard to this land. We've talked about this several times before. We have another development in front of us. There's an issue with zoning as well as utilities. So I'll speak to the zoning portion of it first, and then I'll let Kristen talk to you about utilities. So the proposal, which I have up on the screen in front of you, shows basically 73 lots on the what's called the north side. Those would be sewered lots, and then there would be 14 lots to the south, which would be unsewered. The base density for this overall development would have to go to basically an R4 zoning. The biggest issue staff has with this development is that this allows lots down to 10,000 square foot in size. We typically don't go that small, even in our conservation subdivision design. The lowest lots we have are basically Uleo Creek and Central Growth, which are around 14 to 15,000. The closest actual subdivision I could find that we have built was be Huntington Park. They go down to about 13,000 roughly on some of their smaller size lots with the R4 zoning, so that's pretty similar in terms of the design. Now, this is, again, abutting in industrial users and industrial zoning, so that maybe there's a warrant for smaller lots in this area, but we don't think a wholesale 10,000 square foot minimum was beneficial to the city. So we were supportive of basically the 10,000 square foot minimum on this section here, because this is going to be probably the least desirable area. You're right next to some industrial users. And then this area here, we'd like to see a minimum of 13,000 square foot lots. And that's probably going to end up causing the loss of maybe 6 to 7 lots, depending on how they lay it out. This area, I think, is really nice. The lots are larger in size. This would be non-sewered, but it's still nice, large lots with a nice open space area, so we're supportive of that. I'll turn it over to Kristen to talk a little bit about the challenges with regard to the utilities.
So to be clear, the parcel is already split with respect to the portion that is in the sewer service area and the portion that is not. Staff is recommending that regardless of what develops, that the sewer service area boundary follow the public versus private designation, so that all of the portion of the land within the sewer service area is sewered, and that all of the portion of the development that is on private systems is outside of the sewer service area. Jack noted the more dense property to the north is proposed to be served by both public water and public sewer. The portion on the south would be outside of the sewer service area and therefore on private septic systems and wells. The other complexity with the sewer service is the topography. There is no ability to serve this area by gravity sewer to the existing public infrastructure. The developer is requesting consideration of the utilization of the existing private lift station that is at the end of Enterprise Drive, connecting into that on the condition that it would be a transfer of title and become a public lift station. Staff has 23 lift stations that we already operate and maintain. We are recommending that they have their own collection system and connect into that private lift station through an agreement with the existing owner. But if there is consideration of allowing that private lift station to be converted to public, staff has a number of recommendations, including both a condition and capacity assessment. In order, we have no part of the operation of that lift station, so certainly ensuring that it would be able to serve the development. And then, of course, all the appropriate legal agreements, not only for the transfer of title, but for the ownership and maintenance of that moving forward. And that if either the capacity or the condition assessment indicated that the lift station was not appropriate to serve both all of the existing users as well as the subdivision, that a new lift station be constructed.
Oops, I muted myself. We can open it up to the floor for discussion. I'll just start by saying this plan is a little better than the last couple that we've seen. I agree with some of the staff comments about maybe more dense along the border and fading in with a little less dense as we transition to the south. For reference, a 10,000 square foot lot is kind of what you'll find in the courts and lac de cours. For anyone who's driven through there, they're on the same order of magnitude if you need a visual reference. And then I know when we just had the community survey last year, the single family use here pulled rather well. There's some, that's a general comment. There's a lot of specific details here to consider, but regarding the sewer service, I share staff's concern about taking over another lift station, but I think a condition assessment and a capacity study and the appropriate financial remedies would protect the sewer utility district sufficiently if we were to take over infrastructure. I don't think anything of any meaningful scale is going to happen if it doesn't have sewer there. It's going to maybe all look like the southern plots, and then maybe no one builds those plots next to the industrial area because that's not what that kind of buyer wants. So with that, I'll sit back and listen for a little bit and entertain comments from the council. Any takers? Alderwoman Talaco.
Okay, it's nice to see the single-family houses. I see that there's a total of 107 acres, 23.7 of them are wetlands, and 15.5 of them are in the floodplain. So to me, those are unbuildable as is. So that leaves a total of 67.8 acres of buildable, which would mean that there should be about 67 houses if we follow through with our survey from our residents that overwhelmingly said, we do not want these smaller lot sizes. We want to see at least a half-acre to 1 acre lots. Given that sewer can't service it all and there's some issues to be discussed, I think it is too much in a spot. I think the lot sizes need to increase, and we're going to have to lose some of those homes in order to accomplish both the objectives that we as a city hold, to honor the feedback that our residents just gave us in this recent study, and to be stewards of our land as well. I know that a lot of other areas are doing higher density developments, but that is not Mequon. That's not what our residents want. Mequon is unique for a lot of reasons, and one of it is that we do have farmland and we have the larger acre lots. And I know that a developer will come and say, well, then it's not profitable. No, thank you. Well, then you're not the right person to be building in Mequon, because that's not what our residents want. And I think we have a duty to uphold that and make sure that our future developments coincide with that.
Alderman Bratt.
So this might be a question more to Jack and Kim, but this has come before the Common Council 2021, 2022, and
Yes.
2024. What's the difference from the previous version?
This is the 2021 version up on the screen. This one had a total, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see, there was a total of 116 rentals and 55 single-family lots. So this was a lot more dense in terms of the number of units total. So you can see the single-family was to the south again, but this was all shown as duplexes and multifamily. And there was another proposal by Newman, which is actually the same exact number of lots as what's proposed tonight, 87 exactly. So those are the two. I think there's only two proposals that the council has seen before.
Thanks.
Correct. And how many total acres again?
So 107 total acres are wetlands and floodplain, but the yield plan shows, depending on how you do the yield plan, you could get between 90 and 170 single-family lots based on the R4 zoning district. So they are within that range, or a little lower than that range.
Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. In the past, I've opposed projects at this site. We've accomplished a lot of data gathering since that point in time, including the community survey that Mayor Nurbin referenced. I think it was 66% of the population was in favor of rezoning this, so that was really helpful data to see. I appreciate that this proposal doesn't, it kind of got away from the multifamily higher density that we saw in the last proposal. I always wonder what it would look like, but so if you look at the enterprise cul-de-sac, I do think it's really odd having, is that an entrance to the subdivision from the back of that industrial park?
Well, again, this is concept plan. We could keep that as an entrance, or we could just have it as an emergency access point. I mean, we'd typically like to have more than one access point to that development. So it is a little odd coming from industrial to single family, but it'd be nice to at least have an emergency access point there. I mean, those are things we'd flesh out.
I get the emergency exit part. And I'm just thinking about the residences there too, just having an industrial park exit flowing through their subdivision. That won't help values. One of my comments, Director Tollefson's always great about encouraging connectivity, and so I do appreciate that this has gravel paths and mowed paths and asphalt trails. So great job to the developer there. What I'm not seeing is any sort of, I see a pocket park, and I don't see any like community gathering places, whether it's a pool or like a meeting area or a playground area. This is just purely an attempt to cram as many housing units in there as possible. So any sort of development that we would consider here must have amenities so that we are consistent with other developments that we approve across the city. Another comment in here was that all the garages are going to face the street, and I do have a problem with this, not because of, mostly because we have such an inconsistent policy here with front-facing garages, and there's one development that didn't happen in my district, and it's sitting because the developer was saying they wanted a better mix. They were being forced to have side-facing garages and front-facing garages. Yet here we're okay with everything being front-facing. And meanwhile, that developer nothing has happened there, and it's a big regret I have that we gave that developer such a hard time, and yet here we are saying, all right, everything can be front-facing. I know this is concept, we're not saying that, but so my feedback would be, well, let's try to be consistent and at least have them attempt to do some side-facing garages.
Well, I'll just clarify. I think that if they go down to 10,000 square foot lots, then you almost require them to be front-facing because the size of the lot is just too small.
It's physically impossible. Yeah.
It's pretty difficult at that size. But if we go to 13,000 square feet, then you could actually potentially do some side loading garages. And again, for single family homes in Mequon, we don't have a specific rule in other subdivisions unless it's a PUD, like the Enclave TDR site with a PUD. We do require like certain requirements for garages for that development, but for like Highlander Estates or any other development, that's really up to the market to decide whether they want front loading and side loading. Now, again, they have bigger lots, that's why there's a possibility, but the 10,000 square foot limit would limit that ability to do front loading garages. And I did pull up, I do have, just to kind of give you a little context. So this is Huntington Park, and these are basically 13,000 square foot lots along like Foxkirk area. So these mostly have front loading. There is one side loading garage. I do have a Google image. This is basically a 13,000 square foot lot. These are all 13,000 square foot lots. So it's not as dense as it looks on paper. It is actually pretty nice development in terms of the size and location. But once you get below that 13,000, it's really difficult to do.
What about like street lighting? Or I know this is getting into the weeds, but will we require street lighting and sidewalks and all that good stuff?
Well, we haven't got to that level yet, but we're just looking for feedback from the council to decide whether they want to go down to this avenue of rezoning it before we can get to that level.
Well, my guess is once they do get to that, they won't be able to fit as many houses in either, because all the other subdivisions we've approved have all had sidewalks, and I'm looking for some consistency. So just make sure you're communicating that to the developers how we've approved other subdivisions, so that they're not coming in and saying later on like, oh, sidewalks are making us lose 2 units of housing. Like, just tell them up front.
Yeah, sidewalks are typically in the right of way, so that usually is an issue. And then we've required for Highlander and for Enclave, we required sidewalks on like just a main thoroughfare road going through not all of them.
All right, a couple more points. Thanks for listening. Obviously, the City of Milwaukee water contract is not finalized quite yet. We're still waiting to hear from them, so this represents a significant increase in units, so I'm hoping that will move along faster. I'm assuming you don't feel like we need to get consent.
We all wish it would be going faster too.
Yeah, I know.
It's not necessarily the Mequon side that's pacing that, although they do have an official request in their email inboxes and their physical inboxes.
Yep, so we're assuming that the City of Milwaukee will be okay with us bringing more capacity on, which is good. They should allow us to. But I just wanted to point out we're still waiting on that contract. It's a huge unknown. And then finally, I'm not trying to tie it to the Southwest Corridor. I just wanted to, I know in the past I've expressed reservations, and I just wanted to thank staff and Economic Development Committee for getting us along to the point where I do feel comfortable letting go of this area for industrial. Mequon has no more industrial base. The industrial park has been very successful, and it's essentially sold out. There's very few parcels left, so that we were not able to accommodate growth for many of our industrial companies. So the city took it upon itself to do the sewer and water study for the southwest corner of Mequon. And as a result, I feel comfortable that there's land there, and that even though I think it was just 47% of the people in the survey were in favor of rezoning that area into kind of a higher and better industrial, I feel like we can educate the public about the benefits of it. And so I'm not too concerned about that. And really the only risk is that we don't have any proposals for that area, and who knows when we'll get to it. Because so there's a bit of a gap in time. I would have liked them to be simultaneous, where we're bringing that online at the exact time where this is going offline. But there's been enough great research and effort to make me feel comfortable. So thank you for going through that process where I can vote in favor of a proposal here. Just not this specific one. It needs more work.
Well, if it needs more work, we should get all the feedback on the table while they're here.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've definitely made progress in the southwest area and gotten some valuable community feedback. Alderman Bach.
Just a question, are there any residential areas adjacent to this? I mean, what would be the closest and?
Well, there's a whole east side of Bear Road is mostly single family. There's a hodgepodge of uses there, single family, and there's industrial users in there. I can pull up the map of the area.
And then what are those lot sizes on the single family adjacent to Bear Road?
I'll get to that. They range in size. Let me just zoom into that area.
Oh, they're not at this density because they're older
Yeah.
parcels.
Yeah.
And they're not on sewer.
And they're not on sewer.
Yeah, these are roughly, some of these are an acre, some are a little less. So here's the area we're talking about. The closest, like, single-family development to the area is probably going to be across the railroad tracks by Cedarburg by Bayberry, or if you go west, you go to Enclave and things like that. So most of this area is not, there is some scattered single-family homes in the area, but there's not like a development per se in the area.
I know. I remember sometimes we look at the area surrounding there too, and look at those lot sizes and making some decisions. That was just my question.
The ones immediately across the street are almost all 1 acre, with the exception of one.
Yeah, they're about an acre in size.
So they're close. Yeah.
Well, they're close in net density.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for making me turn right, Mr. Jones. Alderman Hancher.
Thank you. I have a couple questions and comments. The first question or comment I have, I talked to a couple residents in that area. This is my district, and Kathleen Lane, and they're very concerned about the development in regards to the flow of the water, because they've had flooding in the past, and they're concerned that this development would increase the flooding. So that needs to be addressed if it goes forward. That needs to be addressed, and to talk to the residents and tell them what needs to be done, and making sure that the DNR, MMSD, and the city all looks at it and make sure that it's not going to create any more flooding or water going down to them. Because I actually spoke to a couple people on Kathleen Lane that contacted me about this. That's high on their list. So I would not approve this if it bears out that it's going to cause problems for them. The second comment I have is I would agree with Jack about going to 13,000 square feet in that certain area, because I don't think having all front-facing garages aesthetically looks good. I'd rather have some that are varied with front-facing and side-facing. The other question I have is the top and the bottom, so are they considered one subdivision or two?
Well, subdivision is a legal term. It could be one or two, depending how they do it, or it could be phased. I mean, it's really, we haven't fleshed that out yet.
Are the names going to be the same?
What's that?
Are both of them going to be called the same?
It's a concept plan. That's,
Okay.
that's details. That's
all right. Then I
miles
have
down
a
the
question
road, just
here.
like the stormwater management.
So
Yeah.
So as I was reviewing the plans, and it's been standard practice when you have two areas like this, they're always connected with a road. I don't see a road connecting the top half to the bottom half. Is there going to be a road there?
Under this proposal, there is no road that's shown. Again, this is concept. We could require a road connection between the two if you wanted, if that's something you would
Well,
be
because
supportive.
here's the thing. I took a lot of heat because Huntington Park, I agreed to have I supported roads connecting to the new subdivision, Swan Ridge. And some residents didn't want that. So now if I go back over here and there's not a road connecting that, I'm going to be, they're going to ask me why. So I'm not going to approve of this unless there's a road that connects those.
That's fine. We can look at an option for that. The hard part is there are some wetlands that bifurcate the site.
I want you to know that.
Sure,
Because
sure.
Because if
No, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, exactly.
You understand?
Yeah, exactly.
You understand my predicament.
Yes, I do, exactly.
Okay.
Sure.
Because if I wanted a road, I thought it's good for the city. Same thing here, though.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't make sense not to have a road that connects those two, because when you talk about the rationale that was given to people in Huntington Park was for snow removal and public works, and, police response times and so on. So I want a road that connects those two.
No.
Other than that, sorry. Other than that, I would approve of the concept of having residential here. I met with the owner several times about developing. So other than the few comments I have, I would be in favor of residential area in that spot.
Alderman Strelchak.
Jack, what are you recommending for lot size, 15,000 square feet? Or did you say 13?
I thought 13,000 would be the lowest we'd go, other than this area kind of at the bottom here. I think that still gives us enough space without losing too many lots. My concern is if we require 15,000, we might lose too many where the deal no longer makes economic sense for the developer, so.
Well, there's still city standards, and if it doesn't fit and the deal's not right, it's not right. You know, we'll try to support the landowner and help them develop something that's nice, but, you know, we got to stay with standards. Kristen, my next question's for you. On the lift station, where's our ROI on that for our sewer users?
To be determined. I mean, it's not ours right now, so we're getting rates with very little to no operation and maintenance costs on that. So right now, our rate of return is great. It would ultimately depend on the number of customers, but it being a building contribute, it wouldn't be an outlay of cost. And at this point, user rates cover all of the annual operation and maintenance costs, so we wouldn't anticipate that to change.
Have we analyzed fire and safety as it relates to response times for adding a subdivision of this size to this area?
No, not at concept plan review, we would not.
I know that when we've had burglaries, they've been in and around this area, so we'll need a little more police presence just to keep those people safe. Plus, we have industrial park usage literally in the backyards of these places where people could be working 24 hours a day, and, you know, we don't know who they are coming in and things like that. So I'll be really honest, like, I'm okay with some level of housing. My concern is with the density on the north. I would like to see that as phase 2. Because my concern is that they're going to build all the inexpensive houses and say, oh, we can't get anyone to build the more expensive ones south, which really is the zoning, you know, that gets us closer to the zoning that we want, and they're going to take all that into account. So I'm concerned that that's going to be phase 1 is going to be all the smaller houses, and they'll be like, oh, we don't have the market for the phase 2, which is the part that the city actually desires.
I think the developers here, you could probably address that question if you want to bring them up. Do you have time?
I don't yet. But
I think it'd be appropriate, yeah, if the developer would want to comment on anything, please have a seat and just make sure to turn the microphone on.
All right, well, I'd like a little time back after they talk because I wasn't done.
That's fine.
Yep, thanks.
We're not going anywhere.
Am I addressing the question that was asked on?
I believe so. Or if you want to comment on anything you've heard.
This is a tricky site. I think it was said very well by staff, servicing it with sewer, making it economically viable, providing a product that people are going to want in this part of the city. We felt like dividing the property into a lower cost product to the north and a more expensive product to the south makes a lot of sense. Modifying the sewer district made a lot of sense to us. So I did read through Jack's report. We're very amenable to go into a little bit larger lots, the 13,000 feet. I do agree with his assessment, a 10,000-foot lot, it's going to be difficult to do a side-loaded garage. I think when you get to 13,000 feet, you're going to get an assortment. If you dig into Jack's report a bit, when you address the garages, I think there's a lot of different ways to address garages in the view of what makes for an attractive streetscape. Moving the garages back a little bit so they're not prominent to the main house. There's a lot of architectural controls we can do to help with that, to give a great streetscape. And so I think that can be addressed in either the HOA, the deed restrictions, and the developer's agreement. So I think we can address that and take care of that concern. I guess there was a question raised connecting these two areas. I think, there's some plus minuses there. I think being able to provide a cul-de-sac kind of private allows us to demand a little higher price for those houses on the south. So we don't just do the lower costs to the north and then ignore the south. That's not what we want to do. I also think there's some logistical issues that we have to dig into because this is concept. Getting that road through there, those are kind of wetlands between that area. It's difficult. And so we're trying to provide economics here that work that also will meet what we think will be demanded by or wanted to be purchased by customers. So regarding the lift station, what we're really asking for is we're going to upgrade the lift station. We're going to get it to the city standards. We just think that these customers are going to be paying into the fund and that should be taken on by the municipality, the city. Other than that, we're not asking for any city money. We do think this is going to generate in excess of $600,000 in revenue for the city. We're excited to do it. It's a tricky site. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have industrial to the north, and it's got some wetlands. I think we had some concerns about stormwater management. I think as we do and develop that engineering plan, state statute requires us to maintain that water on the site before we release it. So there are governance to that, in my experience. And residents always ask about flooding. They're very concerned about flooding. By state statute, we'll reduce outflow of this property after rainstorms. So it's more of making the public at ease with the design of the stormwater management plan for the flooding. But it is a concern that almost all neighbors bring up when we do infill developments like this. So hopefully that answers some questions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Tom Jansen, president of JPJ Corp. The family owns the land, my family. I live in Mequon. I have two siblings that also have homes here in Mequon. We're proud to be working with Miller Marriott. They have an excellent product. I want to mention that this area is Zone B5 industrial. We could conceivably put 1 million square feet of industrial here. So it's a little bit different than rezoning, say, farmland to residential. This is land that is zoned that could have very intensive use to something that is much more compatible. So at some point, you're going to have that transition from industrial to residential. So we're proud of what Miller Marriott is proposing here, being almost a lifelong resident of Mequon. I want to see this. I would be proud of it. Our family would be proud of it. I think the city of Mequon could be proud of what is being proposed here with this, especially the open space.
And then we'll let Alderman Strelchek have his couple minutes back. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
and with you guys
interrupted
right
him.
there, that's great. So just kind of some of my feedback, GMI Solutions is an OEM assembler. You're going to have people working there from an OEM assembly standpoint with trucks coming in and out. And you've got several lots that are backing right up against that. Up and just to the left, if General Metals is still there, they were a customer that I think 15 years ago, 20 years ago of mine. I know they do metal stamping and laser cutting, and they have large hauls of metal and products coming in and out, with heavy semi traffic. I've been in that cul-de-sac when semis have turned around in that space, so that really is kind of what that is and used for. So I think the connectivity to that spot really isn't necessarily. I don't think it's the best thing for the residents that you're hoping to put in that space. And I don't think it's the best thing for the city from that standpoint, because they complain to us when they don't like how we did something. So I agree with Alderman's opinion that we should try to connect, internal to the subdivision with the larger lots and the smaller lots. Just from, the two entrances in and out from a safety standpoint. What I don't want to do, again, if you want to build 1 million square foot, building for industrial on that space, that's industrial space. I'd love to see it. Like, you're not getting me to sway from my opinion. I'd prefer that, because that's what that was zoned for. Now we've got residential that's abutted to industrial, and that's a heavy intensive use really without a buffer, right? Usually you'd go soft office for a portion of it, and then you'd go to residential, and then that's the buffer that you'd want. You wouldn't want to back up a 10 or 13,000 square foot lot to the back of GMI Solutions. You know what I mean? So your good family. Your dad taught me at CRE over at St. James back in the day. So I know that you're trying to do good things, right? And I want to acknowledge that today and make sure that that, I'd like to, try to support you, but there's some things that I just see that are like challenges with this. So we gotta, if you come home with, with a plan that acknowledges those things, I think a lot of us can get behind it, including me. There's just a couple bigger gaps that, I'm glad you came forward for the consultation on this today that we can hopefully address. So any questions for me on where my support kind of lies, or any of those? I mean, I know we don't usually go back and forth, but you're here talking about something that I brought up to start, so I want to make sure that I acknowledge you guys formally and respectfully.
And I very much appreciate that. I can totally appreciate connecting these two roads.
Yep.
And we can make every attempt to do it, but it is tricky because there are some wetlands in here, and we need to get delineations and see where they're at.
Yeah.
So I can't sit here and say, I know for sure we can connect them.
Yeah.
And if that's something that has to happen and we start to dig into it, we just can't figure out how to do it, is that a non-starter? Should we not bring it back?
One more point of clarification. The water flowage out needs to be equal to as it sits currently in the directions, not reduced, correct?
That's standard stormwater management. It wouldn't be
No, I
any
know, but
different
they
than
made
any
the
other
statement that
development.
they're required by state statute to reduce it, and that's not true. It needs to be the same. If we can reduce it, great. That's a win.
Yeah, but
Same or less, you're correct.
And just a reminder, that's rate, not amount.
yeah, it's true of any development that would go here. If they put the 1 million square foot industrial use, that's never going to go there.
That
it would
was
be the
his
same.
point of concern, and I just wanted him to be aware of what to kind of watch for, because
I'm just saying that I know it's a concern, but it's also
It's covered, I
true
know.
of any development, no matter what would go there.
We've been through a lot of it together, I acknowledge you.
Yeah,
I'm on
it's-
the same page.
It's not really, it's a consideration, but it's not key to making a decision.
Great.
Alderman Meyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. Would not be in favor of the city taking over the lift station and agree with city staff on that. That's just really obvious. When you stated earlier about Enterprise Drive, did you plan on connecting that or not, or what?
Well, the plan actually shows a connection there now, but if there's a concern about that connection, it could be just an emergency connection. We have that in other areas of the city as well. So it could be a full-blown connection or it could be an emergency connection. I mean, we haven't vetted that out thoroughly yet. We're still at concept stage, but it depends on what the feedback from you guys are.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of that, number one, connecting that whatsoever. First of all, I mean, that is just an area that we'd be opening up another problem with having an exit off of that and going through the subdivision. We just had a meeting about speeding. We just had a meeting about all the safety stuff inside. And one of the things we talked about is, the newer developments that we do, we need to have more of a chicane type going through the subdivision, so it's slower speeds for the residents that go through it. Connecting up Enterprise Drive with that would just have a thoroughfare going through the subdivision inside there, so I'd just be totally against that if that happened at all. And, the layout needs to be, more curvy inside of the stop, speeding inside of the areas, and that's just something that we deal with constantly inside of the subdivisions. Front facing for all of them, I mean, just not a fan of that, and then I don't think that's a good look whatsoever. Lot size is the main issue with me inside of it. Having something that's 10,000 square feet, or even 13,000 square feet is not acceptable to me inside of it. I wouldn't be voting for it at that. I do understand the fact, and I do appreciate the fact of, developer wanting to get the most out of it and the landowner wanting to get the most out of it. I can appreciate that, all that fact, but, taking back and looking at the survey that just recently came through, and along with Alderman Talanco, what she had said to the fact of that, that's not what the residents want inside of the area, and that, and we have to be respectful to what they, what they want to see inside of their city also. And you gotta, patent that a little bit with the fact of that, what would be best for the area inside of it. I love the stuff that's in the southern part of it, the lots inside of there and that. I mean, that looks great. But I would not be in favor of the smaller lots in top of there for it. Wish I could be, but can't.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, a compliment to my colleagues. We've come a long way on this particular discussion that has been on the table since when I became a council member. I appreciate the open discussions and certainly the feedback related to this topic. Since this had come up when I first joined the council, knowing that the Jansen family was in favor of trying to find a way to develop this, I've always been in support of ultimately trying to find a path forward to making this work, because I think that this is good for the family and it's certainly good for the city, and I think it's good for the surrounding area in terms of what it's going to do with some of the open space that it creates, in terms of what it could provide for the town center, in terms of taking advantage of the interurban trail. I totally respect all the comments from everybody, and certainly we are guided by our residents in the survey. I've made this comment before, and that is sometimes the survey can be misleading because we ask the questions in a way that, one size fits all. And I don't always think that we can apply the one size fits all concept in every decision that we make as a board. And it may come across at times that we've got different standards or there's some inconsistencies, but this is a rather unique property as we've heard in terms of the surrounding neighborhood to it. And there's been, again, a lot of different things that have been put on the table over the years. And certainly if industrial could have been built in this area, I think it would have by this point. There's been years that's been tried and hasn't worked. And so I think this is the next logical step, is to look at what we might be able to do with it from a development standpoint in terms of what's being proposed here. A couple of things that I focus on that I like, one of the key points was the yield. The yield number was higher than what the proposal of this plan is, if we were to go ahead and look at it as an overall property. And so that really hit home with me. The other piece that I have a hard time overlooking is the business side of this, and in terms of what it's going to do for revenue for the city in terms of value, property value that would be added. Again, I think this is a great area to be looking at something like this. I would encourage everybody to continue to discuss how we might be able to make this work, also keeping in mind that it's got to be economically viable, right? We can sit here and put a bunch of demands on them, but at the end of the day, this property could be sitting, and at the end of the day, adding no additional value and additional utilization of the surrounding area. And that would be a bigger concern to me than, you know, just shutting it off, than continuing to find a way where we can make some concessions to try to make this work. I would be in support of looking at going with a little bit higher lot sizes on that north end over to the east side a little bit more, going to 13,000 where it isn't directly behind manufacturing facilities. From what I heard from Mr. Miller, it sounds like that may be something that is viable and something that he can make work from his perspective. So that sounded somewhat encouraging. In terms of the lift station, coming back to the mayor's original comments is kind of where I was thinking about it as I was reading the information, and that was that there's a number of recommendations and/or conditions that are being put on that before the city would even consider that. If that was able to be met and it was up to the standards of certainly what we have in other areas, I think that gives us the assurance that, you know, this isn't something that we're going to be dealing with from a maintenance standpoint and having to add to the capital budget for some time. And again, it's feeding a lot bigger property. And so I think that there are some advantages for potentially all parties to look at the city, at least going down that path of potentially calculating an ROI and looking at what that might look like, meaning that there would have to be some additional analysis, but I wouldn't rule that out from my lens in terms of just saying, no, you know, we don't want to take on any additional responsibility. And I appreciate what Director Lundin and her staff has done with all the other lift stations and the additional, you know, burden that puts on staff. But at the same point in time, I think it's something that we should certainly go ahead and consider if that's a major factor in either making this a go or no-go decision at the end of the day. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you make some excellent points. I mean, we typically don't, in the past, have not considered the potential revenue increase to the city when making decisions, but with our budget situation, we're actually not in a position where we can continue to ignore it. I don't think it's going to ever be a foremost consideration in our decision making, but we're down to a couple of pennies on the thousand that we can legally increase the tax rate before we have to consider a referendum, which means we're up against it. You know, if inflation kicks in, there's no relief valve for the city. So it's, again, we're not going to be ever chasing development as heavy as, you know, city of Grafton or village of Grafton or you know, city of Cedarburg is now, but we can't ignore the reality of our own budget situation either. So you need to come away with this with a number of high-level guidance. This is a concept plan. This isn't a final plan, but let me reiterate the large things I think you need to come away with, formulate if you're going to come back and see if we can do a straw poll to bring this back together and wrap this up. Just general concurrence that people are comfortable with residential, pretty big one. So that with no other qualifying statements, who's comfortable with some form of residential? Looks like almost everyone. Okay, we don't have to debate that. 10,000 square feet seems to be a pinch point for some. Jack's recommended 13,000 developers amenable to incorporating that. Who is comfortable enough with that, noting that some of our more popular subdivisions actually have lots of the same size. The Lactacors is smaller. There's several others that are developed where the lot size is that small. The net density is still an acre. which would make this no different in many respects. Who's comfortable enough with that going forward to see it come back for more? Okay, a narrow majority. And then the sewer lift station, assuming that the capacity is determined to be adequate and the condition assessment is all brought up to current standard, and it's the classic developer build and contribute, who's comfortable taking that over, assuming we can get a development that's big enough to support the long-term operation of it. Hoping it's the same people that just said they'd vote for the 13,000 square feet. Okay, no one wants a new lift station. You're condemning this property to never be developed then, I think. You should just know that. It's unfortunate. Other than a few large houses with mound and septic.
Yeah, well, I've seen like over on Baldev Court, there's a private lift station, and that's not like a reason why people aren't developing there. I'm just trying to understand what you said.
Well, we've got a few instances where there's a very, very small private lift station serving a few houses. This is not that. This is major infrastructure that I think most HOAs are ill-suited to actually manage properly. Okay. I mean, my HOA struggles to manage a water system.
I would have been a maybe. If maybe was an option, I would be a maybe there. I just need more information.
The key thing is that it's all brought up to standard before it's dedicated to the city, and then the long-term upkeep is funded by the actual users of it, just like every other lift station in the city. I don't think we should, I mean, I respect Director Lundine's opinion, but I don't think we should be too intimidated by that opinion to hamstring ourselves when there's, serving, what is that, 70, 80 residential units, something like that. It's not too much to ask. Alderman Strelchak.
I didn't raise my hand for that one because I just don't know the ROI of the lift station and the risk.
Well, there is no ROI calculation to do, actually, because it's paid for, it's upgraded by developer build and contribute, and then it's the same ROI as the rest of the sewer system because all users pay into it.
If the maintenance cost of the lift station is going to exceed the cost of the sewer revenue that comes in at any point, it burdens the sewer utility. And it's not worth it from a sewer utility standpoint, and that's your decision right there, and that's why I didn't raise my hand for the lift station. If we're making our sewer residents pay more for sewer services because we want to put a residential subdivision, next to an industrial park, that is not an advantage to them. And that's where you lose my support on it, because the greater community, my district doesn't give a damn. They don't want, they don't want to spend more, anyone in the sewer utility district. Like, it's great. And that's who I'm voted in to represent.
That's no different than any development.
No, I know, but what we don't calculate out as a city council, and I don't want to get into the weeds real deep on this, but we've had a couple sewer additions and whatever, and we did our due diligence just to make sure that it wouldn't cost us more in the long run to put that in. If it doesn't cost us more to absorb the lift station, and it's not going to be a higher, where we're going to have to spread that cost over the sewer utility to other users, and that portion can absorb what is necessary to take on that lift station, and the sewer users are going to actually cover that lift station use, then I'm in support of it. Absolutely. This is a great idea. As long as that cost doesn't exceed.
That's how all utilities work, though. They're inherently, cost of operating is covered by the sum total of all the money the users pay in. So I don't know if you can you accurately calculate the cost to replace that lift station in 50 years and do a calculation?
Yeah, you can.
Only on these, I don't think you can, actually.
Present value of money and where you anticipate it's going to go. If the market changes or something changes wildly, we can't predict that. And that's fair to everyone in the sewer utility to have that statement. So
my point is, we've never made this a condition on any other new proposed development. This one may involve a lift station, but we've never done any similar calculation.
I think it's going to take more city resources to support this lot with this development that we're going to get the offset in the tax base. But if we can figure out that I'm wrong, I'm more than happy to, I will champion this. I will be the one sitting in that chair next to those guys saying this is a great idea. I mean, that's, you know, like, that's all I'm trying to do, because we're going from industrial, which has got like a low to no use. The lift station, they could have a private agreement with the current lift station for an industrial use, and there'd be zero burden to any of our residents here. And what our residents vote us in for, and I'm going to quote Connie Pouquet from years ago, they don't quote for us to say yes to everything. They quote for us to take in what they say in their opinion, take that in analysis, and then do our homework on it. I'm just asking for the homework portion of it so that I can make a quantitative decision on, is this a good idea or not? I
Well,
like
that analysis
this.
hasn't been done because this is a concept plan. Yes, that's a condition of
You're arguing
yes.
points that I'm not making, and I don't know why
No,
we're
I mean, I
disconnected.
think you're just expecting a lot at this. The developer, if he's comfortable, is going to go invest probably multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to take this further. We can throw a wet blanket on it pretty easily by piling up a bunch of
Yeah, but your
bunch of
statement
requirements,
that we were
but-
sinking it by not supporting the lift station was, hey, I came forward and said I'm willing to support it if the lift station doesn't cost all of our other sewer utility, you know, extra money to put it in, because we have infrastructure.
But we're not going to pay to put it in. It's going to be brought up
pay
to
to support it. You're getting into the very specifics, and like the broad brushstroke point I think I'm making is a really good and valid one.
I'll just say we've never, ever required that of any other development.
Don't know why we don't. It's how businesses operate.
I missed who to the left here wishes to speak.
Just a quick comment to that. I live in a subdivision with 36 residents. We have our own lift station in there. I can guarantee you that the residents of Juniper do not cover the cost of that lift station. But without those residents in this city, you know, going ahead and feeding into businesses and, you know, taking advantage of services and paying taxes, you know, you got to factor some of that in. The other piece in terms of, I think, where the mayor's coming from, how do we project where fees are going to go in the long term? How are we going to project where costs are going to be for replacement costs 10, 15 years out, right? So in any event, I happen to agree that, you know, if we make things too difficult, this land will be sitting here at the end of the day and we're missing out on an opportunity.
Well, we asked the question once about the sewer, about the lift station. Anyone feel differently about it after discussing it further? If it's upgraded and the capacity's there and we bring on, you know, 60 or 70 new users who are going to help fund it long term, I'm in favor of it. Straw poll, okay. I think a couple of yeses down there. Okay, I think we can wrap our heads around that one. Is there any other critical piece of information at a high enough level we can get a straw poll that you need?
I just think the connection of the two subdivisions together and the termination of the connection with Enterprise Drive, we should maybe just talk a little bit about. It's kind of minor, but I think it's, for some, could be a deal breaker one way or another, so.
What was the second question, Jack?
The termination of the Enterprise connection for a full access point.
Agreed.
Okay, so the connecting the northernmost subdivision, I'm going to consider these two separate subdivisions due to the significantly different nature of the two proposed developments. First is the termination into the end of Enterprise Drive. Is anyone comfortable with that? I think there's a lot of good reasons not to, other than it's interconnecting, which is generally good. But I think Alderman Meyer's right. You're going to have people maybe potentially cutting through there to get to work and cutting through the subdivision, and that'll just end up being an albatross in the long term. Does anyone think that's okay? I don't see anyone raising their hand that wants to support that. There's some feedback. Now the second half of that question was the connection to the southernmost subdivision from the northern one to the south, and I guess before we vote on that, I'll say that it's a little bit different than Alderman Hansher's situation for a number of reasons. The two developments are significantly different from one another, and one of them didn't predate the other one by 30 or 40 years where they could get comfortable to no traffic on the end of a dead end. So it's the same, but it's also not the same. For me, it's not a big deal to have those two connected. I understand what the developer's doing. Does anyone else want to see them connected or have a comment on that? Alderman Parrish.
Yeah, I guess if the northern subdivision could have two further apart like entrances, which I don't even know if that's physically possible, I probably would be okay with keeping them separate. But that is a really dense, the northern development is really dense to not have two ways out. So if we're taking away the enterprise, there has to be a second way out of there. So I don't know if that's possible or not, so therefore I don't know how I would vote in this.
Two separate entrances.
But certainly the northern part needs two entrances. That's just way too many people coming in and out of there. So that probably is connecting it to the southern point. Unless they can prove that they can do two on the northern.
Alderman Bach.
Well, you guys said that you would make every effort to try to connect the two, right? But you have to study that a little bit more. I mean, that was what I heard you say.
Yeah, we need to do an updated wetland delineation. We need to understand where that is and see if we can fit something in. I'm not positive we can, and make it to city standards. So we can investigate it. I just can't sit here and say we can do it for sure. And then I'm going to invest $100,000 or $200,000 and then say, well, you can't connect them. We're not going to approve it. I would like some direction. Like I can attempt it. I just can't guarantee I can do it.
Well, to Alderman Parrish's point, maybe we could just require or recommend two connection points, and they can decide how they do it, whether two off Bear Road or one through the subdivision to the south is an option.
That's fair. Yep, that's fair.
Okay.
Well, does what Jack just said, is that amenable for people to get to supporting it? Okay, we got a majority of hands raised. So anything else?
No, I think the feedback was great and I very much appreciate it.
Okay, I hope this wasn't too much. I hope we had enough to make something meaningful happen here for a variety of reasons, but hope to see you back.
I appreciate everybody's help and feedback. Thanks.
All right, in the interest of moving swiftly, we'll gloss over the Committee of the Whole planning calendar and move right to a motion to adjourn Committee of the Whole. Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now adjourned.